4 weeks before our first service, we did not even have a place to meet. Panic was starting to set in. Where was God when we needed Him? At that time, I was a member of a local civic group, and they held a meeting in the conference room of the Holiday Inn. As soon as I walked in, it was very clear God's hand was guiding us, and I knew this would be the place that CCC would hold its first service on March 22nd, 1992. We arrived with all the equipment in the back of our red escort wagon, CCC's first portable church vehicle. We set everything up in the conference room for worship and used 2 hotel rooms for our kids' ministry. We then waited and prayed, wondering if anyone would show up. Our planning team arrived, then those in our first small group, then friends, and finally the guest. When everyone was there, it was standing room only in the conference room, over 100 people for the first event. We settled into about 30 or 40 regularly for our first year. God had the right place in mind for us. I assumed we would meet at the Holiday Inn for several years and then find a new location, but God had other plans. I was contacted by a total stranger and asked if we were interested in a church building in Five Pointville. I didn't know anything about this area because our ministry was focused around Denver, Reamstown, Reinholds, and Adamstown. And I really wasn't very interested because we had already been offered a one-room schoolhouse with outhouses, so I envisioned more of the same. After a walkthrough with a group of men from CCC, we decided that God was leading us to take this next step to a place that would become our church home for the next 5 years. Eventually, it would serve as the home to our student ministry and our staff, and now even our 56ers. God clearly knew what was needed before we even did. We were running out of space at the chapel. We'd used the fire hall parking lot. Our kids' classes met in a members' home in Five Pointville, using a van to shuttle them. Sound familiar? Outside in a tent during the summer, and in the fire hall next door. We didn't know what to do. The schools would not lease us space for more than a few weeks at a time. One day I was driving by Gaiman's Mennonite School, and I remembered a comment from an attendee 2 years earlier who said, "I believe God will lead you to meet at Gaiman's." At that time, I didn't know anything about GMS. I didn't even know they had a gym. So one day I drove over to the school and wandered around to the back to discover a very large building behind the school. I contacted the principal, we met with him, and discovered they did have a gym, discussed terms of agreement, and a partnership was started to provide us a home for the next 15 years, with a beginning rent of $85 a week. In February of 1998, we moved in and could not believe how much space there was for our church to grow. During that time, we purchased new chairs, updated, remodeled, added storage, technology to create a great place for ministry. God's hand was clearly guiding us to just the right place at just the right time to provide us a new location. We kept asking ourselves the question, do we need a building? The answer was painfully no. Obviously, we wanted a building. Gaiman's allowed us to add another service, put on-site storage, contract a cleaning service, and even build a parking lot that is primarily used by only us on Sundays. Every time we had a reason to say, we need a building, God said, not yet. At the same time, we wanted to be prepared for God's next step for us. This caused us to launch an intentional search for land in 2007. We nearly signed another deal before God gave us a nudge to investigate a piece of land we had looked at before. Earlier, we had tried to find the executor of the property as the owner of the land had passed away, and we had given up on the search. It took one call to an attorney, resulting in pointing us towards the executor. Several months later, we signed on the dotted line. It continues to become clear to us as we fill up the gym, parking lot, classrooms at GMS, shuttle kids to the chapel for 56, sound familiar? That we are going to need a building. So God has provided for us a piece of land, and we plan to build on it one day. We're praying that His hand will continue to lead us as we plan for the future at CCC.